Well, Mr. Gillespie, you're ready to go. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the City of Boise's Public Examiner hearing. A few things just to get started off with for this afternoon's proceedings. It looks like we actually don't have anyone on Zoom, so I'm going to skip that whole section. Oh, I said it and someone joined. So I'll read these instructions. Everyone from for this afternoon's public hearing entering virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. So as the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you will be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures this afternoon for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. We'll then go to the applicant and then to a representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association. This will be followed by questions from the hearing examiner. After that, we'll proceed to public testimony, starting with those that are in person and signed up in advance, and then anyone else who is here attending virtually. If you are attending through your telephone, you can type *9 to raise your hand. Each speaker should state their name and address for the record to start off with, and then each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it's limited in code. Finally, the applicant is allowed time for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the hearing examiner will deliberate and render a decision. Looks like for tonight, Mr. Gillespie, we have accepting the minutes from last month, followed by 2 items. The first one is a variance at 604 North Walnut Street as a recommendation of denial, so we'll be hearing that. No one signed up in advance for it. And then the second one will be a variance at 3120 North Tamarack Drive. That is also a recommendation of denial. Again, no one signed up in advance, so hopefully should be a probably straightforward evening. And with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you. I'm an independent decision maker hired by the City of Boise and approved by City Council. I make decisions this afternoon on variances and administrative appeals. Any request to reconsider these decisions must be formally requested in writing pursuant to City Code. This afternoon, we will utilize a consent agenda. That means that if the applicant agrees with the staff report and if there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. This afternoon, we don't have anything for the consent agenda except the March 2nd minutes. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, though, as we just discussed, we'll hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed by Mr. Holmes. Thank you all for attending. My name is Milt Gillespie, and I'll be the hearing examiner rendering decisions this afternoon. So without objection, the minutes from the March 2nd, 2026 meeting are placed on the consent agenda and approved in that one fell swoop. All right. So next order of business is number 1. This is CVA 26-5. And we're going to start by hearing from Ms. Lockhorn.
Good afternoon, Mr. Gillespie. The item before you is a variance to encroach into the street side setback and deviate from the access and connectivity standards located at 604 North Walnut Street on 0.17 acres in an R1C residential traditional zone. The site contains an existing home that was constructed in 1951 and is proposed to be demolished. The applicant is requesting 2 variances for the new construction of a single-family home, one to encroach into the street side setback for living space and the garage, and the other to take access from a higher traffic roadway. For the first variance request to encroach into the street side setback, the applicant states there is a hardship with the site as the staggered sidewalk along the property's frontage on Franklin Street creates a hardship, as well as the zoning requirements impose regulations that do not recognize the existing conditions of the property and adjacent properties. The planning staff does not find an undue hardship with the property. It is located on a flat rectangular lot that conforms with the minimum dimensional standards of the zone. By demolishing the existing single-family home, any legal nonconforming status is lost, and the new structure must comply with the development code, including the R1C setbacks. The proposed home is new construction and can be redesigned to comply with the R1C setbacks. Street side setbacks are larger than interior side setbacks because they are intended to provide clear lines of sight around structures at intersections. Allowing encroachments into the street side setbacks would conflict with public interest, safety, and health and introduce new nonconformities to the site. For the second variance request, the applicant explains the existing and proposed driveway location allows for the retention of mature trees along the Walnut frontage, and the proposed driveway location on Franklin would be farther from the intersection versus where it would be located on Walnut, which allows for better visibility for both vehicles and pedestrians. The development code requires when an alley is not available, the vehicular access shall be located on the street with the lowest traffic volume to the maximum extent practicable. The garage shall take access from Walnut Street and not Franklin Street, which is a collector roadway. This will remove a pedestrian vehicular conflict zone area as the current driveway intersects with an existing sidewalk. While the existing home does encroach into the setbacks, this does not provide any justification to continue an encroachment for new construction or a driveway on a higher traffic volume roadway. In conclusion, the planning team recommends denial, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Lockhorn. Is the applicant present? Please. If you could state your name and address for the record,
yeah,
I'd be grateful.
Can you hear me okay? Good afternoon. My name is Michael Belt. I'm with Dwelling Design. My address is 2901 West Neff Street in Boise. I'm here regarding the variance request for the 604 North Walnut Street. This project involves removal of an existing home and construction of a new home on a corner lot at Walnut and Franklin. As you know, we're requesting two variances, a reduction to the street side setbacks and allowing garage access from Franklin Street instead of Walnut. Okay, so this is, and do I just kind of push arrow side to side? Is there a pointer on this too?
I will have to do it since it's a PDF.
Oh, really? Okay, no problem. At a high level, this project isn't about pushing the limits of code. It's about working through the constraints of a corner lot with two frontages and existing site conditions and how those come together in a practical way. And while the lot itself is flat and rectangular, the hardship here isn't about topography. It's about how a corner lot, existing trees, and intersecting geometry all interact in a way that constrains a practical and reasonable design. Madison, if you wouldn't mind going to the second page, just the second one. So if we look here at this slide, we're looking at the existing site context, and you can see the surrounding homes along Franklin and how they relate to the sidewalk. Many of these homes are located roughly 10 to 26 feet. You can kind of see on the right side of our home, I believe that's 26, and then the ones to the left, I mean, we're all the way to 10 feet from the sidewalk. Now, if you look at our proposed project location, and if you wouldn't mind going to the next page, please. So this is just zoomed in of that same image. You can see that the proposed home is set significantly further back. It's over 30 feet from the back of that sidewalk. Again, neighbors to the right are roughly at 20, and neighbors to the left are where they are at 10. So rather than intensifying the condition, we're actually improving it, creating more space between the home and the street and a better relationship to the pedestrian environment. And you can see that clearly we're comparing the existing home to the proposed condition. So in that slide there, the red hatched area is all of the existing home that's sort of encroaching well beyond the setback and even beyond the property line. Let's see here. So in our opinion, this isn't creating a special privilege. It's actually producing a condition that is more consistent with and in many ways improved from what already exists in the surrounding neighborhood. Because this is a corner lot, the property is effectively subject to two front yard conditions, both Walnut and Franklin. When those setbacks are applied together, the buildable area becomes slightly constrained. The requested setback reduction is the minimum necessary to allow for a reasonable building footprint while still maintaining consistency with the surrounding neighborhood. And as part of that, the garage depth is designed to support typical residential use, circulation, and storage consistent with what is commonly built in similar homes. Reducing it would result in a more constrained and less functional layout rather than a reasonable one. Staff noted that the lot itself is flat and rectangular as suggested, and suggested the project could be redesigned to comply. And that's true, it could be redesigned, but the constraint here isn't about the lot in isolation. It's about how a corner lot with 2 street frontages, an intersection condition, and existing site features all interact together. When you look at those factors collectively, strict compliance doesn't resolve the constraint. It simply shifts it. And in doing so, creates a less functional and less desirable outcome for the site. Would you mind going to the next? Now, if we look at the landscape plan here, you can see the concentration of mature trees along the Walnut frontage. If we were to shift access to Walnut on that side, we'd have to put that garage as far back as we could off that intersection. We'd be taking out some very mature trees. In contrast, the proposed design places the garage in what was relatively the exact same spot as the existing home's garage and driveway, which allows all the trees in the area to all be preserved. And now, do you mind going to the next slide, please? Now, with the proposed site plan, you can see the driveway location on Franklin is set well away from the intersection. So what I want to just draw attention to here is in our proposal, we've got a driveway that's roughly, I believe it's 90 feet away in that dimension there. And then if we were to put it off of Walnut, we'd be in the 50s. And so that's a difference of roughly 35 extra feet that we would be away from that intersection. And while Franklin does carry higher traffic volumes, this location maintains clear visibility and greater separation from the intersection, whereas shifting access to Walnut would concentrate those movements closer to the corner. So while the code points to access to the lower volume street, in this specific case, strict compliance actually results in a less desirable outcome. We'd be removing established trees, we'd be pushing the driveway closer to the intersection, and reducing the overall space in between the home and the street. The proposed design does the opposite, and importantly, it does not create a negative impact. It improves safety by increasing separation from both street and the intersection while maintaining clear visibility. This configuration also reflects what already exists on the property and within the surrounding neighborhood where Franklin access is already established. Next slide, please. At the end of the day, this is a corner lot with competing constraints and a proposed design that is a balanced solution. It preserves existing trees, it maintains neighborhood context, it improves spacing from the street, and it results in a safer and more functional layout. And for those reasons, we believe the request meets the intent of the code and represents a reasonable and appropriate use of the property. This isn't about asking for an exception. It's about choosing the better outcome for this site. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone here from the neighborhood association? So it's Nina or Ina? Ina, right? Okay, thank you. So time for my question. So my first question is Mr. Bell. So you referred to among the hardships, existing site conditions. Were you specifically referring there to trees, the trees, or was there anything else?
Trees.
Right. Thank
Trees.
you. Ms. Lockhorn. So is it the city's judgment that the applicant contends that their design minimizes the removal of mature trees? Does the city agree with that? And if the city agrees with that, is the city still of the belief that the variance should be denied?
Mr. Gillespie, that is correct. The city would rather have the driveway on the lower traffic roadway of Walnut versus Franklin Street.
Right, thank you. I don't have any more questions. So at this point, thank you very much.
Okay.
So I'm going to go to the sign up sheet. The only person on the sign up sheet is
Was
Mr.
me.
Bell. So you don't count. So is there anyone here today? I mean, you count, but you're the applicant. Sorry. You count a lot, sir. Is there anyone here today who'd like to testify on item 1, CVA 26-5? All right. Is there anybody online?
Do have a Katie Clark online who should be able to speak once they unmute.
Ms. Clark, would you like to testify on item 1?
Yes,
Please go ahead. Give your name and address for the record.
sure. My name is Katie Clark. My address is 1120 East Franklin Street. So we're the house next door. I was hoping to ask a clarifying question. I'm sorry, my daughter came into the room at the exact moment you were talking about the garage side setback and the impact on the trees along our shared property. Would the applicant mind restating whether the requested variance changes the likelihood that those trees would be retained versus removed along our shared property line?
Mr. Belt, you may choose to answer that. You don't have to. So if you, Ms. Clark, let me try and rephrase the question. So she is the neighbor,
Directly to the east.
yes, directly to the east on
Yeah.
Franklin, and she's asking whether or not the trees would be retained if the variance is denied.
The plan for the trees on between what is currently our proposed garage location and her property would remain. The setback on that side would remain. We
Right.
still have our front door off of Walnut. So no, I don't really anticipate any difference there between the two.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Clark, did you have any other comments or questions?
Hi. I would like to just provide a testimony or a request that the trees along our shared property line contribute a great deal in terms of privacy, screening, and neighborhood character. And if this setback variance is approved, we would request that the approval include a tree preservation condition that requires the retention of the identified mature evergreen trees unless an arborist demonstrates that the removal is unavoidable.
Thank you, Ms. Clark. Is there anyone else who'd like to testify in this matter? All right, Mr. Belt, you have up to 5 minutes for rebuttal. You may waive that or you may take your 5 minutes.
I think I'll go ahead and wait.
All right, thank you very much. So, Kevin, did I get everything in order right? Okay, so this hearing closed. The matter is before me. So my decision is to deny CVA 26-5 for the reasons stated in the staff report. And in particular, I would just point to 2 facts. First of all, throughout the East End and the North End, there are many homes that were built before the zoning code was enacted. So whenever evaluating a variance, it's very difficult to consider the fact that, yes, in fact, along the street, there are other people encroaching into setbacks as an excuse to justify more encroaching into setbacks. When the city passes laws, it automatically grandfathers in people who were non-conforming at the point it was passed. But going forward, the city has a reasonable right, and I think we would all agree, generally good policy to enforce the laws it does pass. And in this case, the setbacks are very clear. With respect to the hardship, I agree with the city. It's a flat, square lot. I don't see any reason why we can't design a from scratch building to comply with the setbacks that are in code. With respect to the access off Franklin versus Walnut, again, the city for many, many years has tried to discourage driveways on collectors. They have a reasonable right to do that. It's grounded in sound policy. And I didn't hear anything difficult about taking access off Walnut other than it would impact some trees. The city's estimation, that's a worthwhile trade-off. And in this particular case, I'm going to accept the city's judgment. So that's my decision. Thank you. No. No. I'm sorry. So thank you very much. On to item 2. CVA 26-11, and we will hear from Mr. Holmes.
All right, thank you, Mr. Gillespie. Yeah, so this item before you is a variance request over at 3120 North Tamarack Drive. We're over here, large lot rural area, and in a R1A Sycamore overlay, Sycamore character overlay, which is kind of at the root of this variance request. So the Sycamore overlay has a singularly unique way of calculating front setbacks, and it's determined based on where your neighbors are at. So you kind of look to the north, look to the south, and then you take the average of the two. And this is supposed to lie between 20 feet or 40 feet. So there's a range there. So if both of your neighbors are back more than 40 feet, you're at the bottom of the range or top, however you want to look at it, which is the case on the subject property. So since both the neighbors are back more than 40 feet, the front setback for the subject property is also 40 feet. So the request this afternoon is to encroach in that 40 feet, 2 feet 8 inches. So pretty minimal for a 2-car garage, about 25 feet deep, 2-car garage that would be added to the existing house. So how did we get here? The applicant contends that the process itself is the undue hardship. Based off the information that we have quite a while ago, a request was made to the city on what the front setback for the subject property was. A planner responded via voicemail and provided the standard R1A setbacks rather than the Sycamore overlay setbacks, which led to some confusion. Unfortunately, the site plans that were submitted, which is where the actual review and approval takes place, did show the 40 feet. Therefore, they were approved and the building commenced. I have this section of code up here about the erroneous issuance of a building permit basically does not grant that exception from code, which is really why we're here this evening, because a variance is needed. As outlined in the project report here, the planning team does feel that 3 out of the 4 findings can be met. This is a pretty minimal encroachment. There's still quite a bit of room between the street and the front of the garage. Because the setback in the Sycamore overlay does change based on the property, there are many properties nearby that have setbacks less than 40 feet. And it's interesting to note here that theoretically the neighbor to the north could build an addition onto the front of their house, thus changing the setback on this property, and this actually would be buildable without a variance. So it is a unique property. So the applicant, which I'm sure can explain better than I can, or it's kind of calling the undue hardship, the process and the unique characteristics of the site is the Sycamore overlay and the variable nature of that, which is not something that we in the planning team typically support for that first finding. Usually we're looking for topographical features, a big rock. So for that reason, we are recommending denial, but I think the applicant will probably have some additional information they can provide as well.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Is the applicant present? And your 10 minutes of fame is here. So if you could give your name and address for the record, I would be grateful.
Timothy Gamble,
You can list
16.
that if you want. Yeah,
Higher.
just pull that up.
Yeah.
There you go.
You'll need it even more. 16, Timothy Gamble, 1612 North 6th Street in Boise.
Mr. Gamble.
Yeah.
10 minutes, Mr. Gamble.
So as I've already stated who I am. So I'm Tim Gamble with Gamble Construction. We've been serving the Treasure Valley for more than 50 years with quality remodeling specializing in highest quality service with the utmost integrity. We have a reputation with the city wide of doing things the right way, working with city officials and strictly adhering to the standards and regulations presented to us. We're here today to discuss the variance application of my client Karen and Derek Stone, or Carla and Derek Stone at 3120 North Tamarack Lane. Project consists of a full-scale renovation of the existing structure with an additional element to the north, including a new garage towards the front of the home. The design work was completed by a separate entity and served as our guideline for the scope of work. The resultant discrepancy from design to completion is approximately 2'8" in the established 40-foot setback at the front of the home. The survey was completed later on, indicating the boundaries as such. I think that's in your paperwork. A standard front yard setback in Boise tends to be 20 feet. Notes in the permitting process noted that this was in the Sycamore overlay, but did not specifically note what the setback should be. I had trouble finding this on the website, so I made a direct call to the city. I got a response from the city planner indicating that it was a 20-foot setback in that area. And I have that on file still. I believe Kevin's got it as well. But so the footprint of the existing structure is already established in this instance. It's not a new build. So we're working with an existing footing, framing, flooring, and framing. And as such, the dimensions from the structure are established by the existing building, not a new structure. So the garage setback is established essentially in this case from the existing structure. If I build out the dimensions indicated on my plan. And given that it was our understanding that the required setback is 20 feet, we felt that there was plenty of room to work with and I was not concerned. And just in the last year, I had a project on Hill Road where my setback was very tight. And I actually had a pre-planning meeting with the city inspector in order to just confirm before we got anywhere. This was an instance where I didn't feel like that foresight was really needed because I had plenty of room to work with. So I wasn't as proactive in this case. So anyway, demolition of the existing structure and other garage work began in mid-November with footing prep and footing work for the addition happening in late November. The first series of footing inspections were completed on November 26th with a result of pass, indicating setbacks appear to be per plan at the time of inspection, addition and garage reinforcement, and forms for footings appear to be per plan. From that point, further work was proceeded here with concrete footings, foundations, and the resultant flat work of the garage. Inspections proceeded into early December as work progressed. Subsequent framing work proceeded per plan with new walls being erected in good faith. A phone call from the building inspector came in late December indicating a complaint regarding the setback being a non-conformance. At this time, we were setting trusses and it made sense to continue setting the garage trusses at this time, but all other work was stopped on the area of concern. So further work on the garage has been stopped at trusses and sheeting, but the remainder of the work has proceeded. So to date, the remainder of the project has proceeded as planned with the interior of the main home currently working into cabinetry and trim work, with all exterior roofing and siding having been completed up to a point where it won't impact the portion in question. Every attempt has been made on our end to keep proceeding without impacting the area of question. All work to date has been done in good faith with no attempt to skirt the rules. The work was completed using information we were given and proceeded with guidelines and procedures overseen by the city. Earlier today, I drove up and down Tamarack observing the other residences on the street. Of note is that none of the homes have a consistent setback, as Kevin indicated. I would say at least 30% of the homes on Tamarack encroach into the setback farther than our subject project property. One property appears to be less than 15 feet from the property line. And when approaching our property, it in no way seems out of character or in place with the surrounding properties. The improvements to the home from an observational standpoint fit into the neighborhood character and in no way seem out of place. The 2'8" encroachment into the required setback does not impede on any utility or access easements and would not restrict further neighborhood or right-of-way improvements. The encroachment does not produce any life safety concerns of any kind. If we're required to move the existing 2'8" at the front of the garage at this point, I estimate it to be about a $20,000 job in order to take down the front portion, saw cut back the slab, re-excavate and pour new footings and then reframe it. That doesn't include what I was already anticipating having to do, like the garage door siding, the roofing elements. So that cost would be a hardship on myself and my homeowners. The additional burden of the homeowners is being placed, or homeowners being placed on the owners. Further project delays will cost them in construction loan interest until such time that the project can be finalized and closed out. A further burden to the homeowner is the resultant substandard depth garage, which is less than 22 feet. This does not render the garage useless, but it certainly limits its usefulness for its intended purpose. He has a large truck. He would like to park it in there. Obviously, that's not a life-ending thing, but it's certainly, you're investing this amount of money. It'd be nice to be able to utilize it how you'd like. So anyway, the paperwork speaks of hardship. So these items described above speak of the hardship presented to my client due to the unfortunate circumstances which was beyond their control. Money, time, and less than desirable product due to 2'8". I'd kind of like to ask, who else in the city is impacted by this 2'8"? Does it really impact anyone but them? So that's kind of where we're at. We can review if we need.
Thank you, sir. Is there, so what homeowners association is this one?
This would be the Collister.
Is there anybody here from that homeowners association? Yep.
Don't-
Hollister.
Yeah, I don't believe so.
Okay, got it. All right, so just a couple of questions. So Mr. Holmes, is there any kind of, do we have any disagreement about the facts of what happened? For example, do you agree with the applicant in their description of the facts leading up to why we're here?
Mr. Gillespie, no, that all sounds, as far as I wasn't involved too much in the building
Right.
inspection side of things, but generally, yeah, I think
Okay.
that's about
So I
what
have
happened.
a question for the applicant one more time. That would be you. So you stated that when the building inspector came out and closed the permit as it pertains to the footing, you read a clause that apparently that inspector signed off on with respect to its compliance. Could you read that into the record one more time? Just read it in the record, please. Sorry,
Can't read this one.
I have the same.
So his notes say the inspection comments are setback appears to be per plan at the time of inspection. Addition and garage reinforcement and forms for footings appear to be per plan.
Right. Thank you very much.
That is the time in a process where it's often changed.
Right. Thank you. So Kevin, I'm a little confused. So was the plan, if the building had been built exactly according to plan, whatever the building inspector meant by plan, would we still be here today?
Mr. Gillespie, I believe another miss, if you will, was the building inspection did not measure that 40 feet fully out. I don't believe the front property line was like fully marked, and
Okay.
yeah,
All right.
which led to that as well.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, I don't have any other questions, so we're going to go to public testimony. I only have one person signed up on two. This is Mr. Pat Neeser. Yes, you can after Mr. Neeser. Sorry, you get to go in the open mic section. I have to go by his guy first. So Mr. Neeser, you'll have 3 minutes.
My name's Pat Easter. I live across the street at 3213 North Tamarack Drive.
Nice to meet you.
I've personally spoken with the majority of the neighbors directly on both sides and across from me. And I've not had any negative perceptions in terms of what this extra 2.5 feet. Actually, it wouldn't make any difference to any of us for any reason if it was built, if it was allowed to remain as it's already built. If it was allowed to remain, it would make no difference to us. So that, I just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Newsom. All right. Sir, if you could take the mic, give me your name and address, and you have up to 3 minutes of testimony.
My name is Derek Stone. I'm the owner of 3120 North Tamarack. We're requesting the variance for the 2-foot 8-inch encroachment on for the garage addition. The planning team found that that we met 3 of the 4 criteria, including not impacting the consistency with the neighborhood. The only question is the hardship. The hardship here is not the land, it's the sequence of events. We received approval on the plans and proceeded in good faith. We also received direct communication from the city staff confirming setback understanding. And no concerns were raised during early inspections. Based on that, construction moved forward. The 2-foot 8 issue was only identified after foundation and framing were already in place. Had this been identified earlier, we would have built to comply. At this stage, denial would require removal of installed foundation and framing. That creates material waste, delay in project, and extends our construction timeline. The extension directly impacts our ability to convert a conventional loan into a permanent mortgage and affects the appraisal value tied to the current design of the home with the bank construction loan, which will impact. So it also prolongs construction activity in the neighborhood, which will impact surrounding neighbors unnecessarily. This is the 2-foot 8-inch deviation. It aligns with the neighborhood home or the neighboring homes. And there are other homes in the area with similar or closer setbacks. We are not asking for anything beyond the already existing in the neighborhood. We have written neighborhood support with no objections. This is a small dimensional issue identified after construction began in good faith. We're requesting the minimum relief necessary to move forward. We respectfully ask for your approval.
Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else here today who would like to testify on this matter? Is there anybody online who'd like to testify on this matter?
I don't see any raised hands online. Give it a second.
If you're listening online, raise your hand right now if you want to testify.
And there it is.
There we go.
All right, Wendy Wilson, feel free to unmute and you can speak.
Miss Wilson, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you please give your name and address for the record, and you have up to 3 minutes. Please begin.
My name is Wendy Wilson, and I am the homeowner directly east of the property, 3209 North 39th Street. And I'm just sitting in today for informational purposes. I have no objection to the either way.
Thank you, Miss Wilson. Is there anybody else who'd like to testify in this matter? All right. So this is to the applicant team. You, either the owner or the contractor, any of the 3 of you have up to 5 minutes for rebuttal if you have anything to rebut. So waive rebuttal. Okay, so the applicant's waiving rebuttal. So the matter is before the examiner. My decision is to approve CVA 26-11 for the reasons I agree with the city's conclusions with respect to variance requirements 2, 3, and 4, which were that the variance was acceptable. With respect to the city's claim that there is not an undue hardship, I disagree. And I find that the process errors committed by the city do create an undue hardship for the applicant in this case. And I'm reminded of a famous sort of couplet that famous jurist once said, citizens should walk square corners when dealing with the government. And then another famous jurist corollary was the government should walk square corners in dealing with the citizens. So, you know, the shoes on both foots. I almost always, you know, think that an undue hardship has to be endemic to the site. In this particular case, I think the nature and unfortunate timing of the decision-making process at the city and the applicant created, you know, this particular issue. So that's my decision. Thank you. All right, and with that, this hearing, Kevin, is adjourned.